Hello again, my name is Cecilia Nzondiwa. I am your citizen of the universe chick, and I'm here to continue my series on diversity and inclusion and a lot of terms that are thrown around that. And as we in 2020 are in a global movement of civil rights, we want to talk about the topics that you don't want to talk about, because unless we do, this is not going to go away. It's here to stay. I have a dream like Martin Luther King, and my dream is, in addition to when people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but I think that my dream is more about, I dream of a world where being human will be upheld for everyone. And so that's my dream, and that's why I'm talking about these things in my video series of diversity and inclusion. And again, in one of the videos I talked about, please be wary of people who are jumping onto this bandwagon of, we are going to provide you with programs for diversity and inclusion, and what they're doing is just perpetuating the problem. So one of the biases that we have as people, and that's what I've been observing, companies are bringing like-minded people just to protect their own interests. They don't want to be challenged. Bring someone that is going to challenge your organization to think outside the box and to think differently and to challenge those conscious and unconscious biases. That's what I'm talking about today. We're talking about bias. So bias is normally within the world of racism and discrimination, is normally talked about in terms of implicit and explicit bias. So conscious bias, known as explicit bias, refers to attitudes and beliefs we hold about a person or a group on a conscious level. So if you want to, the science behind conscious and unconscious, in our minds, we have a conscious space where we actually make decisions. But these decisions are influenced by what we hold in our subconscious mind, which then is part of the unconscious bias or implicit bias. And so what does that mean? So, for example, in my conscious mind, I can have beliefs and attitudes about women. When I see a woman pilot, my first time when I flew on a plane and I saw a woman who was a pilot, I was like, oh, that's great to have a woman flying this plane. And then after some time I was like, oh, okay, I hope she'll be able to fly this plane safe. So consciously, I promote and support women. Subconsciously, I've been taught that women are not as competent as men. And so hence my fear kicked in that I hope she's going to help this plane take off and land safely, which she did. It was a very smooth landing in Calgary, Alberta in Canada. And I was like, oh, yeah, I had to challenge myself. As a woman, I've been fighting for women's rights. But here I am holding subconscious thoughts and beliefs about the proficiency of women. That's an example. And then if we want to talk more about the unconscious bias, the prejudice that arise from the internalization of messages we receive from our cultural environment. I'll give you an example. I was born in Zimbabwe and I moved to Canada almost 20 years ago, and I landed in Montreal, great city. I love Montreal. And then I moved to Alberta, and when I came to Alberta, it was my first time to actually get to know that there is indigenous or aboriginal people here. But my first iteration that I like, the story that I was told about aboriginal people was that they are dangerous, they can't be trusted, they are drunks, they are lazy. So that's what I was told. I'm a person who's coming from Africa. My introduction to the environment by people who lived in the country was that of their conscious and unconscious bias and beliefs around indigenous aboriginal people. And so for the longest time, I used to distance myself and avoid indigenous people because of what I was told. And I eventually got to meet some that I had to work closely with, and then I thought to myself, they're just as normal as I. And in fact, I've discovered that in many of their practices, the indigenous cultural practices, they have a lot of affinity with the African culture. And so it just intrigued me, and I am still curious about it. I want to find out more why we have a lot of these reliance on the land, the respect we have on the land, the medicine pouches, the smudging ceremonies, and all these things that really I saw when I was growing up in Africa. And so unconscious biases, and a lot of us are not aware of that. I am in a position where I've been hiring people, and sometimes I have to sit in a panel to shortlist candidates. And I've had some of my colleagues saying, oh my goodness, that name, I cannot even pronounce it. I wonder if they can speak English. That is part of both unconscious bias and some conscious bias, as well. Because having a different name doesn't mean it's difficult. And having a different name doesn't mean that the person can't speak English. Perhaps they even speak better English than you do. So these are some of the difficult and real conversations that we need to have in terms of, I always told my friends that, hey, you know what? I was taught English by the British, and don't spoil or corrupt my English because that's who taught me. So it's all just to say that there is this thing we call conscious and unconscious bias. I have to catch myself too sometimes, because a lot of friends of mine have had unfortunate dealings and encounters with some Nigerians who have scammed them. And so that has also put fear in my subconscious about Nigerian. So unless I really know that person, when they introduce themselves to me and say Nigerian, I'm thinking, okay, my ID is safe. Is my purse close to me? So a lot of us have that. So I'm not saying white people, black people, Asian. I'm saying everyone. We have to check our own biases, implicit and explicit, and challenge ourselves to think beyond that. Are you ready for the conversation? Do you want to make a difference? Do you want to dream with me for a world where humanity is our basis? Not the artificial things of color, of hair, of eye color, of all these other artificial things. It's the red blood cells, white blood cells. That's what makes us human. Leave your comments below. Come, let's discuss this and share with your friends. My name is Cecilia, and you take care.